This is a meeting of the Fort Myers Beach joint session of the Town Council together with CELCAB. It is the Museum Assessment Program peer review with regard to the governance of the Mound House. Calling this meeting to order, and we will begin with a Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. And we'll begin with a roll call, and I'll begin at this end. Barbara Hill, Chair, CELCAB.
Betty Simpson, CELCAB.
Scott Safford, Town Council.
Karen Woodson, Council.
Dan Allers, Town Council.
Jim Adderholt, Town Council.
John R. King, Town Council.
Sherry Smith, Vice Chair, CELCAB.
Ellen Vaughn, CELCAB.
Becky Warner, CELCAB.
Oh, we have to vote together.
Yes, I know. I'm just about ready. I didn't know if you wanted to introduce
We have
yours.
to put you got everybody on microphone so people can hear it.
That's good.
We have to share this one.
That's fine, I'm fine.
Can't you use the,
Okay, we're gonna have to vote to get you into the meeting, so hold on one second.
So
Okay, thank you.
we have to actually have two votes. We have to vote first for the approval of having Carrie join us via phone, and that's the board of CELCAB. So all in favor of allowing Carrie to be part of the conversation today, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries unanimously. And so then there has to be a vote for council. If you could also approve that she can be part of this meeting this morning.
So moved.
All right.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Wonderful, thank you. Oh, so Carrie, you are now officially on board. Thank you for joining us via the phone. Okay, public comment. I don't believe we have anyone that's present here to give public comments, so we will move on to the items for discussion. And this is really a sort of more informational and conversational with regard to the Mound House and the assessment of the museum with regard to best practices that's designated by the American Alliance for the Museum organization. And so with that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Adam, who is the manager of the Mound House, and then he will introduce the peer reviewer. Thank you, Adam.
Everyone, good morning. CELCAB, Town Council. Thank you all for coming out and having this special joint meeting. Adam Knight, Museum Manager, Mound House, Culture, Parks, and Recreation Department. This meeting is going to be basically a conversation, and we're actually joined by a peer reviewer from the American Alliance Museums, Dr. Scott Neal. I'll let him introduce himself in just a moment, but the purpose of this meeting is basically a conversation and to promote dialogue between CELCAB, staff, and council over the Mound House, its operations, governance, and its future, so we can help lay the groundwork towards a future process whereby we would hopefully seek accreditation from the American Alliance of Museums, which is a high honor and a big stamp of approval for museums, opening up a wide range of opportunities, both in terms of not just prestige, but also possible funding opportunities in the form of additional grants, and really a mark of success within the museum field. Less than 1% of museums are accredited. But as I said, this process, the Museum Assessment Program, its purpose is not getting accreditation. It's to make sure we have a clear, defined role and responsibility between the various stakeholders that play part in the Mound House, as well as making sure that we're all on the same page between staff, council, CELCAB, and the various other stakeholders that have a stake or interest in Mound House, and then making sure that we have those roles and responsibilities all defined. So I'll hand it over to Dr. Scott Neal, who will introduce himself.
Good morning. So I'm going to do a brief introduction of my background so you understand where I'm coming from, and then I'll kind of explain what I do as a peer reviewer and what this process entails, and then I'll get into questions. And like Adam said, I want this to be more of a conversational. I'm going to kind of ask you questions. I'm not going to present anything to you. I want to ask questions and get answers from you all so I can kind of gauge the governance of the Mound House, and then when I write my report, I can give suggestions that may help in the governance, as well as collections and various other things that were part of this particular map assessment. So, as Adam said, Dr. Scott Neal, I am currently the director of the Fort Sill Museums and Training Support Facility in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. But my background is I have a bachelor's in anthropology, archaeology from the University of California, Santa Barbara, a master's and PhD in archaeology from the University of Nottingham in England. And then I did about a year of archaeology up and down the East Coast before I got a job at the Smithsonian National Museum of American History. I stayed there for about 3 years and then moved over to the National Air and Space Museum and was team leader for bringing all the major objects and artifacts into the new Udvar-Hazy Center out by Dulles Airport. I helped assemble the Enola Gay, brought in the Space Shuttle Enterprise, brought in the SR-71, hung a number of planes. I had a crane license to be able to do all that. And so once
Down to the basics.
once I had found out that I was probably not going to make it any further in the Smithsonian, I got out and moved to Alaska with my wife, where I ran a small little museum in the town of Wasilla, and you've probably heard of it, Sarah Palin.
Oh, yeah.
So I worked at the small little museum, Dorothy G. Page Museum there, and she was the mother of the Iditarod race. So we talked about the Iditarod and frontier life there. I then stayed there for 2 years and was offered a job at the Alaska Native Heritage Center, and I went down there in Anchorage and worked with the Alaska Natives, telling their culture, their stories. And I kind of jokingly say this, but I was the only one of 3 white people there. Everybody else was Native American or Alaska Native, and they welcomed me into their family and made me part of their cultures. That job came to a close because of funding, and so I took a job at the Fort Sill National Historic Landmark and Museum. It is the oldest complete Indian Wars fort in existence, built in the 1870s by Buffalo soldiers, and it also has a number of very famous Native American collection there. Geronimo, Satanta, Kicking Bird. We have General Sherman's calling card with his signature on it. So very, very large collection for the Army. And then 2 years ago, I was promoted to oversee that museum, the U.S. Army Artillery Museum, and the Air Defense Artillery Training Support Facility, where we train soldiers in their branch history. So that kind of gives you a background of all the experience that I've had. I started as a museum technician, and I am now a museum director, so I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, the entire way up the step. So the map process that Adam and his team went through is, as he said, it's an important part of the American Alliance of Museums, their accreditation process. It allows the museums, before they go into the accreditation process, to have a really good understanding of what is going to be required by them. There's collections, museum assessment, there's also the governance, there's also a community relations museum assessment. So this one is particularly focused on the governance portion of the Mound House. And so when I do this report, it's not going to be a pass or fail. That's absolutely not what I'm here to do, is to fail anybody or pass anybody. It is more to collect the information and then give you recommendations and suggestions to make things better, make things work better for you all, as well as for Adam and his staff. So, you know, the joke is, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. I am from the government, and I am here to help. I really am here to help you.
Okay.
And as I said, you know, I want to create the dialogue between the museum staff, town council, the CELCAB, and the Friends group. When we have the Friends group, we're going to have a meeting this afternoon with them. And I want to try to get everybody's take on what you feel the museum is doing right, what it's doing wrong, what needs to be improved, long-term plans, those sorts of things. So I'm going to ask some questions, and I really just want you all to have a dialogue towards me, but also between yourselves, kind of talking. I'm going to write down as much as I can, and thankfully this is also recorded, so I'll be able to go back, and if I miss anything, I'll be able to make sure that I capture what everybody has said in this report. So with that, does anybody have any questions before I start? No?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I think she said no.
No? Okay. Okay, so the first question is, so do you all know what the mission of the Mound House is? Without looking in your phones or anything like that. Do you know what the mission is?
Yes.
Yes.
If I could,
Yes.
Dr. Neal, my name's Jim Adderholt, history major, University of Wisconsin. I'm the liaison from the town council to CELCAB, which is our advisory committee for the Mound House. I just thought I would just set the table, just to give you, since we're here to talk about governance, just give you a sense of how things work with respect to the Mound House. The council is in essence the legislative body, the policy-setting body. Our executive branch is Andy, our town manager, and Frankie and Jeff and Adam, obviously. And then we partner together with this advisory committee, the CELCAB committee. The advisory committee, in essence, is the functioning board of directors for the Mound House in an advisory committee role. Their decisions are not binding, but I must tell you, we have a very unique relationship here on Fort Myers Beach between CELCAB and the council. Our CELCAB members, first of all, it's chaired by Barbara here, who has an extensive museum background, and everyone on the Mound House has extensive experience on the island on a variety of fronts, including the Mound House. So it's been very unique. I've been the liaison now for 4 years, and I've never once seen a situation where the CELCAB recommendation has not been accepted by the town council. We have questions and we try to get more informed, but the relationship is very symbiotic. It's very positive. There's never been a dispute. There's never been a debate about in an adversarial way. From a functional standpoint, it's really been almost seamless. Now, you might say, are we doing our oversight role? Are we challenging? Are we pushing? And I think that happens. I think it primarily happens at the CELCAB level, because that, in essence, is in effect, the board of directors for the Mound House. So as we get into the mission piece, I would yield to others, but from a governance standpoint, I'm a political science major as well, so I know a little bit about everything, a lot about nothing. But at the same time, it functions from a governance standpoint in a really excellent manner. This advisory committee we have with CELCAB, they really are everyday board of directors for Adam and for Jeff, and they hold them accountable. They ask tough questions, they push. It's all very constructive and positive, but at the same time, they're challenged. But when CELCAB comes to the council, and I think I speak for my colleagues, their recommendations and whatever their policy concerns are taken very seriously by the council, and it's a very positive dynamic. I've seen a lot of dysfunction in government at the federal, state, and even local level. This is one of the things that really works well. And so I just wanted to premise that, because I know this is a governance function. I'll let others comment on the purpose of the Mound House or the mission, but I just wanted you to get that background. And I'm not just saying this, it really is the truth. You go back and watch the CELCAB meetings, you go back and watch council meetings, where our budget process, there's a very unique and positive relationship between all the entities involved here, and it really works well. So I'll try to be quiet, but I just thought I'd set the table a little bit with that background.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll follow up on Jim's comment. I was not a history major, I was a political science major, so I think of myself as kind of a newbie to this town. I've only been here for 25 years. Because you likely know that the town of Fort Myers Beach is a relatively young community as a political entity. Our anniversary is coming up next year. The town will be 30 years old. The town will have acquired the Mound House property 25 years ago, and the museum will be opened. It's either 10 or 13. My brain is a little muddled. It's 10. Okay, thank you, Adam. Having been here for 25 years, and in the beginning, assessed the community from a distance because I was coming and going. But having been a full-timer for more than a dozen years, I can tell you that this is a well-oiled machine, the entire community. There are differences of opinions on a lot of different issues. However, we really think of ourselves as one. And that goes from the town government to all the institutions in the town. And we have been battle-hardened, most recently by Ian, and we come together.
Okay, so I had a few people say that, yes, they knew the mission. So I would ask, what is the mission? What do you think the mission is?
Well, since I have the mic, I will continue on. So the Mound House, as you know, is both a mound and a house. I love that new phrasing that comes from one of our new young staff members. And it is to preserve the history of what is there and to let people know that there is this rich cultural resource on this tiny little island. It's both an archaeological site and it's a historic home, and it contains 2,000 years of history and encompasses all the different peoples that have lived here. And we need to tell that story in a friendly way so that people want to come back.
Yes, and we're also want to bring the culture and the environment and everything really to almost all of Southwest Florida. We want to bring in knowledge of our past heritage for the whole area.
Okay. So, and this one may be kind of off the wall, this question, but I've been asking it of everyone that I've been meeting with yesterday and also today. So, is the museum a town museum? Do you consider it a town museum, or do you consider it a separate entity under CELCAB, under the Friends Group, a nonprofit? How do you see the Mound House?
We are a Venn diagram to the nth degree. The Mound House was acquired by the town, it's owned by the town, and the staff that run the museum
Right.
are town staff members. And CELCAB is volunteers from the community appointed by town council in order to provide overall direction.
I would
Correct.
say it's absolutely a town
Town.
museum. I mean,
Mhm.
it's an attraction through various vacation bureaus that we obviously use to try to draw people here to visit, so I believe it's very much a town museum.
Yeah, I also think very much a town, and I'm a docent on Saturdays, and that's one of the things that I always mention in my opening speech, is that we became a town in 1995, and in 2000, the town had the foresight to buy the property and the museum. So it's a town entity.
Okay, all right. Anyone else? I just want to make sure that I can capture what everybody, if anybody has any opinions. I mean, like I said, good, bad, ugly, that's what I'm here for, is to really try to bring all of that out so that I can make sure that things are where they need to be for Adam and his staff to do that accreditation process.
Well, I'll just add, in addition to being a Venn diagram, we all wear multiple hats, because Sherry mentioned being a docent, I'm a docent, Betty's a docent. Betty has been a docent.
And
Okay. So, you kind of touched upon this. So, how do you see the role in the governance of the museum? So, the town council is the one that, you basically run the museum with them as the advisory committee, and then you have a friends group that does, I guess, fundraising for, the fundraising side for whatever the town cannot purchase for Adam. But, I just want to try to make sure I understand the role of the governance that happens.
Yeah, I would just, Dr. Neal, I would say that the council, particularly post-Ian, is extremely busy with rebuild efforts. And to have the luxury of an advisory committee to in essence serve as the board of directors of the Mound House is appreciated and respected. And I think, again, the day-to-day operations of the Mound House, obviously the executive branch runs the day-to-day operations, but in terms of the oversight and the policy guidance, it really comes primarily from CELCAB, because the council is so busy right now with other things. And quite honestly, even before the storm, there was a deference to CELCAB as in essence, the board of directors of the Mound House. Their recommendations are always taken seriously, and quite frankly, I can't remember a time where they weren't adhered to. So it's a very unique situation. There's never any contention. Obviously, the council, we just had a budget, two budgets, or one budget session. We're going to get ready to pass our final budget. The budget for the Mound House is always universally supported. And the Friends, and I'll let others yield on the Friends, but the Friends sort of supplements that funding. It's not like the town's refused certain things and the Friends has to, it's a very friendly relationship. There's certain sort of extras, if you will, that the Friends comes in and helps with. And it's a wonderful luxury to have, but it not only does the money come in from the Friends, but it also engages the community and connects them to the Mound House. So if you ever go to a Friends event, Friends of the Mound House fundraiser, you'll see everyone in the community there, all walks of life, and it's a very uniting dynamic, and it keeps everybody engaged in the Mound House, and keeps it on the sort of on the front page of people's lives, because they have so many opportunities to engage, not just through Adam's programming, which is excellent, and a lot of public engages that way, but a lot of people engage oftentimes through the Friends events, because it's not only a fundraising dynamic, but it's a social dynamic, and it's a way for people to connect and support the Mound House, which is very popular on the island.
Mhm. Okay. All right, so just so that I understand, so the town council overall is the policy, oversight, governance. The CELCAB, because right now the town is very busy with post Hurricane Ian, you've kind of not delegated, but allowed CELCAB to pick up more of the governance piece of that, and then once Hurricane Ian cleanup has completed, the town council will then reassume some of that?
may have not made that clear, Dr. Neal. The council traditionally has delegated that
Okay.
oversight function to CELCAB. And even before the storm, I just think after the storm, it's even more appreciated, because there's
Okay.
only so much time in the day for the council. And we're thankful to have, people with their level of experience on the island and history on the island, to have an entity like that to show deference to. They really do run the day-to-day operations and oversee the policy dynamics and make recommendations. The town is sort of the functional, formal approval of the budget and the dynamics, but the informal workings of the Mound House, I shouldn't say informal, but just the procedural policies and strategy of the Mound House really come from the CELCAB recommendations, and the council just shows deference and yields to the CELCAB recommendations, just because not only are as a council busy, but we also have tremendous respect for the people on CELCAB and their history on the island and their connection to the Mound House, if that makes sense. It's very unique.
Well, yeah, and that's why I want to make sure I understand that, how this plays out, because typically, if it's a town museum, it's from top down organizational.
You'd think there'd be a temptation for the town to meddle, and the town council to micromanage, and the town manager to stick their nose in. But because of the strength of our CELCAB advisory committee, there's not only, there just hasn't been a need or a desire, because there's so much deference and respect for and I'm just saying this, they really have. If you talk to each one individually and get a sense of their history on the island, it's pretty unique. And so I think the five council people are we're smart enough to know what we don't know, and these folks fill in that space quite well, and we're very thankful to have them.
Okay.
I'd like to add too that the Friends of the Mound House is more than just a fundraising body. I mean, they promote the heck out of the place, and it brings the whole community together too. I mean, the vacation rental companies, the chamber, the hotels, they all encourage our guests to come visit. So it's not just these three bodies, it's everybody working together, it's very unique that a town will promote a museum like we promote the Mound House.
Mhm, mhm.
So it's kind of, everybody's kind of chipping in together.
Okay. During one of the discussions yesterday, it was my understanding there's also a historical society here on the island as well. How does that play in any way, or does it, in terms of Friends group promotion, helping out with Adam, or Adam helping out with them? Is there any kind of relationship there at all? Or do you think there needs to be? I mean, because my understanding is, I guess it's having some problems right now. Not a lot of people are engaged in it, in terms of like a board. I mean, Maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of the impression I got yesterday during discussions.
I think that's pretty accurate. The Historic Society, excuse me, the Historic Group has not had an opportunity to get back into the cottage until recently. And there was quite a bit of damage done, and now we have a lady that is in charge there. It's a group that I think that the historic cottage, and there are two cottages there actually, but they were here, and I don't think that there isn't any conflict of any kind between the two of them. I mean, they're totally different. And the historic is trying to build its participation, and we've got a couple of events coming up toward the end of the year, and we're encouraging people to come back to the historic cottage. So, but it is we have quite a few new people on there, and their interest is strictly the historic cottage. And there hasn't been discussion at the meetings that I've been at of anything with regard to the Mound House on that.
So that's an example of Betty is the quintessential Venn diagram, because she's not only on CELCAB, she's also part of the Friends of the Mound House, and she's part of the historic community. So everybody wears so many hats on this island, sort of like flip the brim around.
Well, and I guess my understanding is, from yesterday as well, is the population, the year-round population has dropped.
By about half.
After,
Yes.
yeah, about half or so. So you don't have a lot of people that can step up into roles to do the volunteers that you need to have done for CELCAB or Historic Society,
Exactly.
et cetera. Okay.
I'd like to make a point
yes.
about what Vice Mayor Jim was talking about earlier with regard to the different roles, and you're absolutely correct, between the council and CELCAB and that symbiotic relationship. However, what we haven't discussed is the role of the staff in terms of implementing. Once we've had the conversation at the CELCAB level, provided recommendations to council, and then the council then directs staff as to what to actually go forward with regard to budget constraints or strategic planning, and, you know, what is a short-term and a long-term goal. And it's the staff that actually does the work. So, you know, we have professionals on staff. We have a growing staff that is really doing the education, promotion, doing the grant writing, running the institution, and really providing all of the services that a museum needs to provide. So again, it's a multifaceted role, so it's not just CELCAB and council, it's the staff that actually does the hard work. They're in the trenches on a daily basis. None of us are.
And that was actually gonna be one of my questions further on, is how, you know, there's three entities that seem to have a stake in this. I mean, really, well, 3, 4, Friends Group, but, you know, three groups have a stake. Friends Group is one of the people, but staff being one, because after meeting them yesterday, you know, you can just tell how committed they are to making this museum the best it can possibly be. Very enthusiastic, all of them were very enthusiastic. They were very honest with me on how they see things progressing here in the future. So that was gonna be one of the things later on, but you've covered that now. So kind of the next question I have, and a number of you have already answered because you said you're docents, but have you ever visited the museum, and if so, how long ago? Have you visited there recently, or, you know, never at all, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? I just want to kind of get an understanding of, you know, how active is CELCAB in visiting and talking with the staff?
Last Friday.
I'm sorry?
Last Friday.
Last Friday.
Last Saturday.
We can just go down the row and everybody can answer, I would think. Ellen,
On Monday, and then I'm there on Thursdays.
okay?
I'm there on Saturdays.
It's probably been within the last year. I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
Just in the last week, and I would say too, is that during, after the hurricane, because we had some real challenges with our physical plant here early on, we actually had a lot of meetings at the Mound House, and a lot of our advisory committees met at the Mound House, including CELCAB, which was really interesting. But for example, like my wife was just out at the gift shop last week getting some some cards, have these beautiful cards, greeting cards, so we're just this last week for me.
Yeah, at least once a month, because our public safety committee still meets there. So we're there multiple times, I would say at least 15 times a year.
Okay.
And then once a month for the public safety committee, and then for every event that the Friends of the Mound House holds, or just going out and standing on the pier watching the people fish.
Yeah, yeah.
I was there within the last month. You know, I'm liaison role to CELCAB, which is Bay Oaks, and so we had our meetings there for a long time after the hurricane. Just recently had another one, but there's also social events. They're doing the singer-songwriter that people are buying tickets to, so it's an active site, if you will, for people to come together, and events that happen, and promotions that take place. So it's not just it's not a place that you go to once every 2 or 3 years.
Mhm.
You know, you just stop in and just look. I love to walk the gardens. You know, we ride our bikes down there and walk the gardens. So it's a different kind of place.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think I go about every other month. I was there with Leadership Lee, so it's not just the town. They actually do some outreach with Lee County. So that was fantastic. So the other members of the Inland family can get to know what they're all about. Yeah, it's fantastic, but I have a vacation rental company, and I know for a fact that last month, I had at least 3 or 4 people that we sent down there. They really enjoyed it, so.
Well, and of course, it's got an outstanding gift shop, and through the years, one of the things that I've always enjoyed was how much the inventory continues to grow, and having kids and grandkids, they have the type games that you aren't going to find in a regular store, and whether or not it has something to do with building a kit of some kind and seeing it explode, and I use that word very cautiously because, of course, the parents would be there too. But just the growth of being able to have these things, it's continued to grow, you know. It isn't anything like it was at the very beginning, but it's been a growth thing, and you can always find little pieces of jewelry that the ladies always like, and the gentlemen have an opportunity to look at for their significant others, and you know, I mean, it's multifaceted, really, to have it, so.
With others, I also had gone to a number of meetings at the Mound House, and obviously meeting with staff, which I did recently with Adam last week. So I go to the Mound House often. I actually signed up for a kayak tour, which I haven't yet done because of the rain, but in any event, it is not only near and dear to my heart, but very convenient. It's only 2 canals away.
And then we have the person on the phone there.
Carrie, what about you?
Yeah, I was just there last month.
Last month, okay. So this is kind of gonna get into the heart of the matter here, is what do you think the long-term plans for the museum? Are there any? Should there be? Do these plans include the Friends group in terms of the fundraising and doing the events there? And I'll be honest, yesterday during the meeting with the staff, one of the staff members brought up about wedding. And I looked out the window there, and it was like a light bulb going on. It's like, this could be an absolute perfect spot for a destination wedding. Which would
Yes.
then generate people going to the hotel, which would then generate taxes, which
Exactly.
all come back to you for services. So that's something that I'm definitely gonna put into my report, is that I really think the council, CELCAB, friends, all need to look at how to get that, the Mound House, especially where there's that one spot where, between the trees, and you're looking out at the water, to make that a destination wedding place. Understanding that there's parking issues, but, Adam and I had discussed a little bit of ways to get around that possibly. But what do you all think long-term plans, strategic plans? And I'm not talking 2 years, I'm talking 5, 10 years, 15 years down the road. Where do you think the Mound House should be? Where do you think, what do you think the topics should be discussed in terms of exhibits there? That's gonna be all part of what he needs to know, and I've told him he really needs to have a long-term strategic plan specific to the Mound House, so that he knows where he needs to go, have the mile points of, here's where we need to get to in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and here's our ultimate goal, sort of thing. And that's gonna be in the report too, but I wanna know from your all's perspective, what do you think the long-term plans are?
Well, I think they need to work with Friends of the Arts as well. I mean, we had some fantastic events before the hurricane. We had a film festival and we had a movie night there, and I don't see why we can't have more of those movie nights. I mean, we had a couple hundred people there. It was it was a beautiful evening, and the kids were running around. I mean, I think we had a Disney film, but you know, it's things like that, that you're integrating with the singer-songwriter, having a couple concerts there, movie nights. I mean, I not and weddings, but I think it can become a place that, you not only do we go down to Bayside Park to listen to the concert, hey, why can't the Mound House be that kind of destination? And it's centrally focused, you know, in the middle of the island.
Right.
So I think it'll alleviate traffic. So I think during season we should absolutely, and the weather's perfect, we should look at having more events there.
Well, and I also think we should take a little bit of a step back. Council right now, and after we get through budgets and that type of thing, we're going to be really going through our strategic plan with a fine-tooth comb that we haven't done since 2017. And I think once the town has their strategic plan in place, I mean, my idea of that would be that all of our advisory committees would then look at their strategic plans and align them with what the council has as direction and moving forward, and that, you know, takes place in budgeting and quarterly reviews and performance. I mean, it is kind of the governing, it should be the governing body, it should not be sitting on a shelf. So I think we're in process of that. I mean, everything else is kind of bits and pieces, and we're getting everything back together from the hurricane and moving forward. But I think that's gonna be a huge benefit and planning process for all of the Friends groups.
And I brought my big folder, and we've been having strategic planning sessions with regard to both the Mound House and also Newton Park, which is, you know, whatever it's gonna be, from the time that I've been involved. So I'm nodding at these people because they've been involved from the beginning. I'm the new kid on the block. I've been involved for like 12 years. But Barbara, Betty, Sherry, and
A little bit later than them, but yes.
go back to the very beginning of the acquisition of the property. They can tell you all where all the stories are. So, but strategic planning and being thoughtful and methodical about how things are done has always been part and parcel. Having come in and gotten involved in this town basically about 12-ish years ago, I was impressed by the sophistication and the professionalism of what was being done on this tiny little place.
Yeah. May I say what your question with long-term, I just marvel at what we have.
Yeah.
With our underground, I don't think anyone has any idea how popular and how people want to see that. people basically come to the Mound House because they've heard about our underground, and very, very seldom do you get to see a whole cross-section of a Calusa shell mound. It goes back 2,000 years ago, and people are totally blown away. And to me, looking in the future, that's where I would like to see our resources go, because we lost a lot of our audio, the lighting and everything, and if we could have something a little bit more and start working toward getting the underground back to where we had videos, we had neon lights, not saying we need all of that again, but if we could bring the education back and the audio visual back to the underground, people are just absolutely blown away when they see it. And I think that it's something that we really, I mean, they like the house also, and the fact that the house has sat on this shell mount. But that underground, I mean, there was one other one in Sarasota, and it's about half the size. It's something that people don't have, and we do.
There's a couple other things I think about, one of the long-term goals that we're looking at is incorporating a ferry service to help with traffic. I think the Mound House could be a very good destination stop along that ferry ride. I think if we could work with our partners in Estero, Cape Coral, Fort Myers, who want to be able to come here but don't want to sit in traffic, if we can incorporate the Mound House as a destination stop. If you've ever been to the Tampa Ferry, I talked about it recently. We were just up there. They have different stops along the way. Some are educational, some are recreation, some are passive. I mean, it's just a really neat adventure. And I think having this as one of those key stops to be able to bring people in from the mainland without having to bring the cars in would be beneficial. I'd also like to see an expansion of the fishing tournaments. Have the kids, we always have a lot of kids fishing tournaments around, to be able to expand that, to be able to bring people in when we have the kids camps that come to Bay Oaks. That could be part of their weekend, if you will, to be able to bring them down to the hotel, but they also get to learn some culture and some history and do some fishing, because it's some of the best fishing in the Back Bay back there with the snook. And so those two things have been at the top of my mind as far as being able to help incorporate into the Mound House vision.
Yeah, I would just add to that, the ferry concept is not some kind of a dream. There's actually a private entity that's already looking at a ferry service, and they think they can make the economics work, and the Mound House is already part of their stops for a proposed ferry system for this area, which would be tremendous. But one of the things I would just challenge our team on, I think in terms of I think that, by the way, the ferry system, those boats are gonna hold, I think, up to 49 people. So it could literally double the attendance of the Mound House, especially on a rainy day when people are looking for something to do. I think too that the Mound House can take advantage of loan exhibits from other museums. I'd love to see something from Edison Ford come over and do a special exhibit, or other museums in Florida or even around the country, and just give some unique new content, maybe for a month or a 6-month period, just to drive attendance. Because if folks have been to the Mound House numerous times, even though it's beautiful and there's a lot of other ancillary benefits of going to the Mound House, just to have some new content every once in a while, even if it's on loan or temporary, I think could help drive attendance as well.
Well said.
So one of the things I would say to that is that's one of the good benefits of getting accreditation. The Smithsonian has a large traveling exhibit program, and if you are an accredited museum, they are more than likely to allow their traveling exhibits to go to your location. So that's part of this process here, that I'm here doing this, so that he can get to that point, and then you can get to those sorts of big name exhibits traveling exhibits. Obviously, space is an issue. When I was in there, there seemed to be space, but I think it could be possibly utilized better, better flow to the experience for people. One of the things that I told the staff yesterday was, my understanding is you have your collections off island, 45 minutes away. This young lady who you just hired has to drive there 45 minutes, do her work, to come back. And that's during the good part of the season. My understanding is it can take an hour just to get from the Mound House to the bridge. So one of my recommendations is to find some way to get the collections into the building itself, into the house itself, so that she stays on site, because you have somebody from my conversations yesterday with her, who is extremely excited. She has a lot of good ideas, but she actually said to me that she doesn't feel that she is needed there because her collections are elsewhere. And I said, absolutely not. You need to be part of this team because you, with the rest of the team, can do the brainstorming concepts that come up with these great ideas for exhibits, programs, etc. So that's going to be one of my recommendations, is to find some way to get the collections into the actual building so that she can be on site 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day. Yeah, my understanding is you all do 4 10s for there just to make things easier for travel. So 10 hours. So that way she is part of the team. That's one of the things that from my professional experience, is team building, making sure the team is excited and not being frustrated because they have to travel and not be part of the team almost every single day. So yes, I just want to clarify that yes, this process, you're going to be able to get some fantastic loans there, but I think the flow is going to have to be changed a little bit to accommodate those ideas of having a loan. Right now, I don't see a place where you could actually put a loan, a temporary loan exhibit, traveling exhibit in place without really taking things out. And that's going to be part of the conversation I'm going to have with Adam today, as well as in the report, that maybe there needs to be some gallery set aside that's a room that's a rotating exhibit space.
Scott, getting back to the issue of storing the collection and documenting it, I understand that, you know, in a perfect world, it would be great, excuse me, great to have it on site, the entire collection, but because of the small facilities that we have there, we understood that there was a possibility, now that the town council is moving all the operations to this new city hall, this new town hall building, that there would be adequate space for us to house the collection there. Are you opposed to having the collection on island but still off the premises, but again within town property itself? Isn't that a good alternative?
It can be a good alternative, but because of the custody, AAM looks at, and if you have a museum background, then you probably know some of the challenges, is you really need to, it would have to be in a secure area that only the museum staff have the key access to, no one else can get into. Not saying anybody's gonna go in there and steal anything, but things go missing. I'll give you an example. At my office, we have a World War II knife, trench knife that just went missing. This is on a military post. Somebody went into a case, took it, and ran away with it, and it's missing. These are soldiers, officers. Somebody did that. You wouldn't think that would happen, but it did. So, I'm not saying anybody's going to do it, but it can happen. So, I'm not opposed to it. I just think it would have to be really strict admittance into it, museum staff only, etc. And I will put that into the report as well. But there has to be that chain of custody and making sure that it is safeguarded so nothing can happen to it.
And with regard to long-range plans, it really has been part of our strategic planning all along to have rotating exhibitions. This was our intent, to get the museum open, you know, the idea of bringing in the furnishings and getting everything sort of to period level was certainly, you know, top on the plate of the short-term goal to open the museum up, open to the public. But long-term, the idea was to have rotating exhibitions, and I think Adam coming on board when he did really is very pro moving that into a short-term category. So I'm hoping that we can really work on that. I think that our exhibitions, to your point, I mean, we're talking about you know, it being static right now because there are no changes to the actual exhibits that are there in any of the rooms, nor have there been any changes since the museum opened nearly 10 years ago. So the idea of bringing in a fresh exhibit, whether it's through AAM accreditation or through other means using part of our collection for a new exhibit, will definitely have to be a more short-term goal in our strategic plan, but that also provides the opportunity for the town to set aside extra funding to make that happen, because that's a very expensive mission.
Yes.
But it is part of our mission to do that, always has been.
Okay, okay, that's good to know.
And along those lines, I think, would it be, looking at opportunities to potentially acquire some land close by, maybe even on the same street? As you had mentioned earlier, parking has obviously been an issue, especially when there's bigger events there. And the parking, overflow parking currently is down the street a little bit further. There are potential opportunities, there are houses that are for sale close by there. I don't know that the town is in a financial position to be able to do that now. Doesn't mean that there's not potentially grants or something that we could go look at to acquire more land that could maybe do what you're saying about having a secure facility close by where she could walk, you know, just down the street.
Yeah.
So I would like to look at that possibility, and you guys would know better than we would as far as what type of grants are out there available to try to acquire land to put into a museum that's safe. I guess is from ever being sold again.
There are like public trust foundations that will buy land and then donate it to the city or donate it to, and as part of that caveat is nothing will ever happen to it forever, based on them buying it. Okay. So let's see. Okay. Well, that was pretty much the questions that I had, because I just wanted to kind of get an understanding of how you all feel or how you all see each organization in the organizational chart for him, who he kind of answers to, you know, understanding that it's a town museum that also has this committee here that will also plays more of a governance policy role than what I had originally thought. I was trying, and I'll be honest, when I first read, I'm like, what is this advisory committee here for? If it's a town, it should just be straight up and down. I don't understand why there's this offshoot over here on the left that is this committee. I now have a better understanding of what they are supposed to do. So with that, you know, I kind of want to open it up if you have any questions of me, the process, any concerns or anything like that. Like I said, I'm here to look at this, and I'm gonna say it again, the good, the bad, the ugly. I mean, that's what this is all about. It's not to embarrass the town in any way, the museum, anybody. It is more of, you know, it takes a lot of guts for a museum to apply for these museum assessment programs, because they are actually admitting we have a problem. We want to make sure that we understand the chain of command in this instance. Collections, we want to understand, we know we have a problem with our collections. How do we fix the collections? So it takes a lot of guts to do this, because they're admitting to an outside person, hey, we need help, and can you help us? And that's what I'm here to do, is I'm here to help Adam, like I said, try to build this museum to be the best it could possibly be in it. And the one of the words that was used 4 or 5 times yesterday, and I agree, is you have a gem there. I worked in a small museum, that was a log cabin in Wasilla, and that was a gem there. You have one, the same thing here. It's just a matter of making sure that everybody, you know, and I know this is not necessarily an Army term, but it's one that I've learned since being with the Army for the past 12 years, everybody's staying in their lanes, and everybody doing what their roles and responsibilities are, and nobody crossing over, because then that creates confusion with the staff, confusion within each of the organizations of, well, why are they talking to them talking about this? Who's doing that? Why are they doing this? So that's what I'm hoping to do with this report, is kind of lay out in kind of black and white, okay, this is how what I got from you all, this is how I see everybody's roles and responsibilities. You all need to maintain these roles and responsibilities and never shall the lines cross, because we wanna make sure that we keep those responsibilities separate from each other.
I think one of the challenges that we have, and this has been sort of endemic, primarily having to do with the Sunshine Law. And because we are a small island and we have half of our residents now here, hopefully we'll get new residents coming in, we'll have some of the other ones come back, that's the hope. But in the meantime, there's been, it's been a challenge on so many levels, both for the town and for the volunteers to make things work and flourish. But it's mostly a legal question, because there has been some confusion about the role of a volunteer that serves on the board of one organization, which is the 501c3 Friends of the Mound House, which is the friend-raising and fundraising arm, not necessarily a legal arm, but an arm of the Mound House Initiative. And then on the other hand, there is CELCAB, which is town-appointed to provide assistance to the council in terms, and to staff in terms of direction. Kind of being an oversight committee to say, well, yes, this is kind of where we were thinking about the original intent. Obviously, you know, staff changes, council changes, we as CELCAB member change over time. So this is obviously always going to be a fluid conversation, but there's gotta be some kind of rule set with regard to the position of the role of being a board member of one and also being a board member of another, because of the conflict of the Sunshine Law. And I'd like the attorney to sort of speak to that.
Thanks. Nancy Stubrich, I get the pleasure of serving the town as its attorney today. Basically, what the Sunshine Law says is when there are two or more members from the same board that meet or have some type of interaction where there is discussion or a relay of information on a topic that's gonna come before that board. So, and it is really the responsibility of the board members to be knowledgeable of the Sunshine Law and to adhere to it. We don't police whether or not there's a sunshine violation going on. It is that person's responsibility.
Individual.
Because there are consequences to it, in the event that there is an allegation, that there is a sunshine violation, and the state attorney will get involved, and there could potentially be some, criminal, actions emanating from that. So it's a very serious thing. Unfortunately, sometimes two people that are on the same board happen to be standing in a corner together, and somebody sees that. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, I bet they're talking about the next item that's coming up on the agenda. When, in fact, they could be talking about a football game, a recipe, holiday gathering. It could be quite innocent. But if that allegation is made, it is not a pleasant situation to be in if you happen to be one of those two people. Because it's the allegation, it's the appearance, you've got to defend it. So we try to take a risk management type approach to caution people, don't be involved in a situation like that. Perhaps have a third party there who is neutral, that could attest if someone makes that allegation.
Does the town have a policy, or would it be interested in forming a policy that would protect the individuals from actually being on two boards simultaneously? In other words, that individual then has to decide, I want to be on the board of the Friends of the Mound House, or I want to be on the board at CELCAB. Maybe I want to be on the board of CELCAB, but just be a member of the Friends. So then there's no conflict, because if you're a board member, you're part of a decision-making body. So I think that's where the challenge is for us, not necessarily for council, because that, I think, is fairly seamless. But there's been an ongoing conflict, and it's not just with CELCAB, it's also with BORCAB, if you know.
You bet.
Right? So it's a question that I have for the town with regard to a policy by which one cannot serve both at the, as simultaneously on the boards.
So that is in their rules of procedures, and I think there's reference to the various committees in the code as well. The problem is filling those spots, and I don't wanna speak for the town. But we run across that in many, smaller communities where there's just not enough people if you only require one person to serve on one board. Under the Florida Constitution, there is a prohibition against dual office holding. However, service on these advisory boards is not considered an office.
But Nancy, I'm
So
not sure that
that's
you're still answering the question. It's a private fundraising group and an advisory committee.
Yeah,
Is
right.
there a conflict of one person being on both?
No, not if it's private. That private entity is not going to be subject to sunshine. They're not a.
Does that help you, Barbara, or?
The private nonprofit that works on behalf of the Mound House is not a legal entity.
It's not a town-created entity. I probably need to look a little further into that, because if the only thing they're doing is related to the government, it would just simply be like we have a independent contractor that's doing all the work for the government or for the town. They're not technically a town employee, but if that is their sole purpose, maybe, but I don't think so. My initial reaction would be no, but I can look further into that based on what their goals and objectives are.
And I think there is the confusion because so many of the goals are similar, if not identical, because obviously, you know, we're all advocates for the Mound House. We all work on behalf of the Mound House. Some of us are volunteers, some of us are paid, some of us
So
serve
the
on council.
direct legal question would be if there's conversations that occur at the Friends meeting, is that a violation if it's the same people that are on
That's-
CELCAB?
You've hit it right there.
But is that same conversation going to occur at CELCAB? And if it does, it doesn't matter if you're in a formal setting, it's two members of the same committee getting together, whether it's in a corner or at a restaurant or in another meeting, talking about something that's going to be discussed. So yeah, I think that probably is a conflict.
I'm not on the Friends Board. I have been in the past. I certainly have been on CELCAB, well, after Betty and Barbara and Sherry. But it is something we have been aware of. On the other hand, if you're on the fundraising thing, it's very hard not to talk about what is going on. And I think, to me, the big, the problem is people. And if you separate the Friends Board from CELCAB, you got nobody left.
That's right.
And if you're gonna tell me, well, okay, I mean, I don't wanna just raise funds. That's not my thing, but I will certainly be there to help out. But to not be able, I mean, it is a very, I get the legal problem. But if you're gonna say to the Friends, you guys just shut up and raise money, which is sort of the feeling I get. I'm sorry, that's just me. And I will also tell you that I'm very cranky. We have not been able to move back onto the island yet. And you all know how that goes. So, but, you know, but it's a real thing.
So if I may, and then this may be
No,
somewhat
go
of a
ahead.
naive question, but when the Friends meet, it's the exact same group?
Often,
Often.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not on the board, but I'm ex officio something.
There's a few others that aren't.
Yeah, Pat? Oh,
Yeah.
Have a meeting in the sunshine.
And the sunshine requirements are really not,
So we meet on Zoom, I mean, we have Zoom meetings all
Well-
the time, so do we just have to record those?
no, the sunshine law requires you to meet in a public setting, in a public place.
Oh,
Where the
we
public
let you
has
go.
access, it requires notification, and it also requires that minutes be taken. So that may be the solution to the
notification
whole
how so?
posting on the website, so the public knows that you're meeting.
Oh, that's easy.
And if the public knows, maybe they're more interested, maybe they're inclined to donate, you just advertise it.
Yeah, because we meet monthly, we keep minutes, we post agendas, and how.
So if it's done in a public setting
It's
where
at
there's
the-
access to the public and the
Mount
public
House. At the
knows
Mount House.
about it.
At the Mount House.
Yeah.
So how far in advance does the agenda need to be posted?
As far in advance as you can. There's no set rule.
Okay.
It has to be a reasonable notice based on, what you're going to be discussing. We like to do at least a week.
Yeah, we can do a week. Right now, we do 48 hours, but because I'm the president of the Friends of the Mount House. So we do 48 hours right now, but we can move it up to a week.
So if it's the same individuals, then is it a CELCAB meeting at that point?
No,
With-
no,
is
the
it-
topics
is-
are very different.
Okay, but I mean,
we're nuts and
you have
bolts.
two groups that are present, basically, because you have members of the other group there.
Well, not everyone that is on CELCAB is, for example, Barbara is not.
I'm
Barbara's
not on your board, I am a member.
She's a member, but not on the board. And Becky comes as this ex officio because she's got a lot of history. Betty's the vice president, Sherry's the secretary.
Yeah,
So
so
I-
again, they're,
I mean,
they're,
the bottom line
they're
is
serving
we-
on, yeah, there are multiple people serving on both boards, and that, to me, presents a conflict. So that was the conundrum, and because I know this is taking up a lot of the time of valuable town council members, I just wanted the council to also be aware that this, while it's seamless on so many levels, there is this underlying conflict that now, because we're being reviewed by a peer, to address appropriately and make sure that we're doing things correctly. And thank you, John, for
And I think
probing.
the intent is, we do want to comply, because obviously the concerns have been raised that maybe, we can comply a little bit better. And I think we can figure out the pieces and put the puzzle together,
Okay.
and come up with a strategy for you. I think, Andy's suggestion is a good one, and I'm happy to sit down
I'm
after
happy
the
to sit
meeting.
down with you too, so
Yeah.
we can hopefully
We
clarify
can, we
the
can
role.
resolve it.
Right.
Because it's good work that's being done by both groups.
And I will say, certainly in the past, not only was I on the board with the lady upstairs and across the hall, you know, and we would get together as friends, and at some point, one of us say, oh, we can't talk about that anymore. And we are aware of
We're
it.
aware of it.
On the other hand, if you can never talk about anything that's going on at the Mount House, if there's two or more, how does that work? It's the handicaps, legal, you know, the town council as well. You see them in the grocery store and, oh my God, what are they talking about? And I'm certain that what they're talking about is recipes and what's for supper.
Football.
Football.
But it does make for very long meetings.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
that is part of the problem, and that's why, as council, I mean, that's why our meetings go so long. I mean, yeah, we have huge agendas right now, but the fact is that we have to iron out and give opinions in front of public at all times, and it takes a lot longer. If we, you know, we can't have discussions of it beforehand, before we get in front of the public meeting. So it's the same thing with BORCAB, with CELCAB, with, I mean, it's just the way our laws are that we have to abide by.
And it's a good law.
Yeah.
And, you know, you get all these accusations, which are no fun, and
And are
it drives me
often
insane.
unfounded.
They're totally unfounded, you know,
Yes.
it's people just spouting off because there seems to be a lot of negativity right now. But it angers you, because it's like, you know, if you're so sure, why don't you step up to the plate? You know, it's like, you get involved, you put your time in, you put your money where your mouth is. I mean, it does anger you once you get those accusations, and trust me, I've gotten them,
Yeah.
so.
So if I understand it, from putting my friend's hat on, if we publish our agenda,
You're making it a public meeting.
public meeting, and they've always have been, it just, nobody else comes, but whatever. All right, so we just publish our agenda, and we meet publicly at the Mound House, and it's actually, we do have a Zoom participation, so I guess we could record it, and then
Yes, and we would probably put at the bottom that 2 or more members of CELCAB may be present
Okay,
and may discuss, or may talk,
Okay.
may participate, yeah. We often do that with town council as well, if we think that there's a meeting that 2 or more of them may be at, just as a safeguard.
Sure.
Yep. And I think we've made a real effort at the fundraising, or at the Friends, to only talk about fundraising. I think we've really been addressing that,
right, because it's
So.
been a priority.
yes.
But doing this might be a good safety net,
Yes.
just in
Yes.
case. And, you know, transparency and the public participation are very important policy, and I know each one of you adhere to that as best as you can, but it's a little bit of a challenge under 286.
Okay, thank you.
If I could, Dr. Neal, on a positive note, I think that was a good discussion. You had said that you thought we have a gem here on our hands, but as a seasoned museum professional such as yourself, can you just share with us as a professional that when you first visited the Mount House, tell us why we have a gem and give us your, again, I know you've got to get granular in your report, but just for folks where this is being televised, so have the public have a better sense of what kind of a gem we have on our hands from your sort of independent perspective.
Well, I mean, the history of the site itself, my background, cultural anthropology, archaeology, I work with the Chumash Indians in California, Alaska Natives, so I'm very interested personally in Native American history, culture, etc. So you have something there that, by my understanding, there aren't a whole lot of those left here. You have the history of the tribes being here, groups being here, building that up, and then the family coming in and recognizing, hey, obviously this is a good spot because this mound is here, so therefore storm surge, etc., didn't do anything, we're gonna build a house here. But I think the biggest gem that you have is right there, and the staff.
I agree.
Personally, because as I said, when I met with all of them yesterday, they were very passionate and very open about challenges that they perceive. I'm all for communication. That's my biggest thing when I tell new employees coming, communicate with me, talk to me, tell me what what we're doing wrong, what we're doing right. So we're all in this as a team. You have an opportunity to really make that place shine, destination wedding. You've got films and other things and other events that could take place there, drawing in the public. One of the things, and I'm gonna put it in my report, but one of the things I talked about yesterday, well, a couple things I talked about yesterday, there is a free app that the Bloomberg Trust
Philanthropies,
Foundation,
philanthropies, right?
yeah,
Bloomberg.
but it's called Bloomberg Connect, and they do free audio tours. They will set it up for you. You provide the information. They have technicians there. It's free. It's all free, and it's worldwide. They have worldwide museums and cultural centers that are part of this. So I recommended to Adam, you need to look at this. I'm trying to look at it, but I don't know from a federal standpoint if I'm allowed to join up with this. So I'm trying to figure that out. I told the same thing for a town, you might be able to because it's a smaller entity. The other thing that I talked about was because of and I asked the staff yesterday, is there a requirement in education, Florida education, to learn Florida history? There is in Oklahoma, and we have a big event that's coming up in 2 weeks where on that Friday, we're gonna have 1,200 or 1,300 school kids visit the one museum, where all the staff are all dressed in period clothing from the 1870s. I dress as a deputy U.S. Marshal and talk about law enforcement in the Indian Territory. But that satisfies a requirement for the schools who were able to book for Oklahoma history. My understanding is that there is a requirement for fourth grade? Third grade? Yeah, it's on. Fourth grade. So fourth grade, the Army Women's Museum has gone to this program that they will do online teaching classes with people that can't make it. So you could reach out further into Florida talking about the history, the Native American history here, the Mound House history, the history of Fort Myers Beach. But it requires some technology, being able to actually have somebody film while they're kind of walking the grounds, talking, etc. But that would get you generate more visits. When you're writing grants, they want to know how many people are you reaching, how many people are coming. You start doing that, your numbers are going to go up. The grant organizations will say, oh, look, they're reaching 10,000 school kids a year. It's a tiny little place reaching 10,000 school kids. So they're doing something right, we need to support them. So that's going to be in my report is you know, looking into this kind of technology to be able to expand the educational outreach that you all do. Right now, my understanding is school groups come, but again, you got the parking situation. How many schools can you reach? You know, you have one school here on the island. How many schools are going to want to come across that bridge, you know, during season? Probably not a lot, because of the amount of time it takes. So now with the ferry, you know, maybe a small group, 20 kids get on with the teacher and can get there in a different way. That would be up to them. But you have an opportunity with this location to really do things with it, especially using new technology, using the best museum practices and standards, which he's trying to adhere to by having this. So I say it's a gem because you have good staff, you have people that are enthusiastic, you have room for expansion, you have room to do new ideas and new programs which will draw in the people here. The only limitation you have is one road in, one road out. So that's going to be a limitation. Having a ferry, that's going to help. If it comes to fruition, you'll be able to have people come in an easier way that aren't going to have to sit in the gridlock. You also have a place that is high ground, you know, that during your hurricanes, you know, I've not had to deal with that. I've had to deal with tornadoes and hail damage. So I've never experienced a storm surge. So seeing what I've seen on the pictures, you have a place that's on high ground. A lot of your records and stuff during a storm could go there, because it's going to be, if it didn't, nothing really happened to it during Hurricane Ian. You've got a good place there for storage of records or other things, because it can take that storm surge unless.
Yeah, but
you know,
there's wind too.
Wind.
You can't-
Yeah, but based on what I was told, you didn't have a lot of damage there. I mean, compared to 97%, my understanding, 97% of the buildings here were gone. So that's one of the few, and how old is that building? And it survived that. So you've got a good place there. It needs some work, like I said, with the kind of the flow and the information. That's one of the things whenever I go to a museum, I'm always looking at how does this flow. It upsets my wife greatly, because I'm not looking at the exhibit, I'm looking at how do they build it, what's the lighting like, what's the case like. I'm not reading anything. I'm trying to figure out how did they figure out this flow to make things work, and is it following a timeline, is it jumping around? Right now, it kind of jumps around, because you got things upstairs that are mentioning a particular family, you got things downstairs mentioning that same family. There's no rhyme or reason really to the flow, in my opinion. So that's going to be one of the suggestions, is to kind of look at the flow of the exhibits and the orientation space. But once you get all that sorted out, I think you're going to be no problem at all.
I'd like to ask some of the council members to kind of clarify everybody's position on what the future role of the Mound House will be. Some of you have already spoken to that with regard to additional events. Anybody
Yeah, if you don't-
want to expand on that?
I'll kind of dovetail into some of the things that I was gonna ask the doctor here. Dr. Neal, in your experience, I know you've talked about like the Bloomberg thing and you just talked about the flow. What would be some low-hanging fruit, for lack of a better term, that we could do immediately with the staff or with CELCAB to implement to increase the visitor experience? You know, I come from a construction background and it's not talked about a lot at the Mound House, but it has survived a lot of storms. And I'm a firm believer, we don't build things like we used to, and they don't last like they used to. I mean, I would really like to see, going into that
Yes.
future, is make more of how it was constructed. And it's changed over the years, right? But the fact that it's made it through the storm, sure, we've maybe lost some shingles and we've lost some things, but the fact that that building has survived is a testament. In today's world, getting tradespeople is very difficult, and it's almost come full circle. I remember when I was younger, coming up, people working in trades were prevalent, but there was no technology people. Now it seems like we have more technology and less trade, so there's a push to get people to learn the trades because they're in high demand. So for me, that's a perfect building to be able to show tradesmanship from the past and how we can incorporate that into the future for better things along. So those are basically my two things. If you could give us an idea in your expertise, like one or two things that you see something very easily that we could implement to increase that visitor experience.
So one of the first things I would do is probably establish a temporary gallery where you can move things in and out quickly. Put something together, put a couple panels together, and talk about construction of the building. That could be an easy thing to do, is talk about the construction of the house, and put that in a temporary exhibit. And then you can move that off and bring something else in. That's still there. You can bring that first exhibit back next year, 2 years' time, 5 years' time. Put it back up on the wall. You're talking about it to new people who are coming through. So that would be kind of one of the things that I would recommend, is looking at maybe the orientation gallery that we sat in yesterday, maybe turning that into a temporary exhibit space. Putting those panels into the living room, talking about the house. Because you've got the living room there, not, if I remember correctly, not a lot on the wall. Put those panels in there talking about the house itself, because that'll be the first thing that people are gonna see when they walk in from the gift store. And then you're going into that orientation gallery that has the film. You could make that space more of a temporary gallery orientation to the site. Talk about construction of it. Talk about the site itself, the Native Americans establishing the mound, and how it came to be. You could rotate that in and out there. I do believe, I don't think the underground should be the sole place that the mound is talked about. It's an important part of it, but I think it needs to be also talked about in the orientation gallery more, or as part of this rotating gallery exhibit, because you could get the various universities around the area to also assist, graduate students to assist, interns to assist in doing the research, coming together, putting these things together, because it looks good on their resumes as students that they help put an exhibit together. We have interns that come and work for us, some interns that are cadets, come and work for us, and they do a number of different things, helping in exhibits, collections, doing soldier education with us, because that's our primary mission, is soldier education about their various branches, and also general Army history. So getting interns there, more interns to come, even if it's a summer intern, but coming to help in the collections, helping the exhibits, grounds maintenance, having them do a bunch of different things. So that's a low-hanging thing, looking at internships, looking at getting the universities more involved, getting the tribes more involved with it. One of the things that we're trying to do at the National Historic Landmark is get what we're gonna call a cultural advisory committee. We had cultural advisory committees in the Alaska Native Heritage Center that I worked with extensively to talk about, from their perspective, their lives, their cultures. So the same sort of thing could be something here. Not that they have a final say anything, but have them there to also give you their perspective of, are you telling our history correctly? You know, in this day and age, everybody knows society has changed. It's more about diversity, inclusion, all those sorts of things. It's the way things are going, and everybody needs to step up and be part of that, and including them as part of this discussion is a very important step in that right direction, and including them and getting them on your side. Because if you get tribes on your side, they're gonna advocate for you when it comes for grants or any other things that are happening, traveling exhibits, et cetera. And you can even get traveling exhibits from them and maybe have an exhibit on the Seminole or, you know, other tribal, may not be that specific tribe that was there, but you can kind of branch out a little bit and get that Southwest Florida history and put that into this rotating exhibit. So, you know, I'm kind of circling, but rotating exhibit would be my primary first thing to look at, and figure out the flow of how this house needs to be, where you want to talk about what, and because right now the house just talks about the house when you're inside there. That's it, and downstairs is the tribe. I think some of that needs to be some of that tribal stuff needs to be upstairs as well.
To that point, and actually talking about low-hanging fruit and what can the council do and how can it be more supportive with some of the goals that we currently have, is actually getting that underground exhibit operational. Sherry talked about this earlier. That is a core part of our programming that is currently not working. It's not something the staff can do until council approves the budget to make that happen, and it's not going to be inexpensive. It's already part, I believe, is what's called Phase 2. I understand it's not in our fiscal budget for this year, but if we can fast track it in some way, because it is a core part of what we currently provide, regardless of what can be planned for rotating exhibits in the future, let's get what we do have working, which is not working right now.
So
And since it may be further on in the fiscal year process that this would happen, that's why it's imperative to try to get something upstairs as part of this, so at least you're touching upon it while all this downstairs basement area is getting funded, getting worked on, getting it back to where it needs to be.
And what I understand from Adam is that there is this opportunity that they've already laid the groundwork, they've done the research, they understand, you know, what's feasible and something that is more resilient than what we may have had in the past for the underground exhibit, to make it better than it was before. But now that they've got all the pieces and parts that we need to be able to fund and order and install, we've started that conversation, we just need to get council support to complete it.
So I think you touched a lot on some of the things. What comes to mind for me is resources. You know, you've heard how everybody doubles up on different committees and that type of thing, and it's no different. I mean, I sit on probably 4 boards on the town and dabble in all of them, and some I do fundraising and some I'm operations, and then I'm on, you know, that type of thing. That's what happens here, and it's even, there's more emphasis now because we have lost half the population living here right now. So I think it's something that we need to look at, the framework of people, resources, budgets, what grants we can use, and kind of start to put that together, and what do we go after first, second, and third, to have, you know, I'm sure there's grants out there that we don't even know about, and who does find out about those, and maybe, you know, you can help us with those kind of things, but, you know, it's kind of like the squeaky wheel, gets the attention, and I know Bay Oaks has done an incredible job of getting the programs for the kids back
Absolutely.
up and running, getting the before school, the after school, the summer camps, all of that kind of thing. But they're running in 20 different directions at all times, you know, so what do we need to do to incorporate that kind of thinking with the Mound House? Because when Bay Oaks came on board again, I mean, we had very, very little, and now look at the programs again. So I think that's something as a strategy session maybe, or part of strategic planning that we can all be looking at. And yes, we're right in the second meetings of budget, but you can always amend budgets.
It's true.
You know, if we find a grant, we can always amend those things. So I think that's part of the low-hanging fruit too, is just a plan, putting a plan together.
So, when I spoke with the finance people yesterday, I did tell them that in my report, I'm gonna give them some ideas of locations for grants.
Right.
Good.
There are a number of foundations out there. Some are more regional than others. There's one in the Northwest, and I think they just take care of the Northwest United States. But it kind of goes back to Bloomberg. Bloomberg, I'm sure there's grants there that they have, because he's a big supporter of culture and art and museums. The Getty Foundation also has a number of grants, but I think they're geared towards more artwork, because there's the Getty Museum out in Los Angeles. But I was gonna do some research, kind of find some ideas, and include that in my report as well, that here are some grant opportunities, some locations that may be able to assist. Now it's a matter of, you know, this young man right here should not be the one writing the grants. And so, and there may be certain grants that the town cannot because of your status. It has to be a nonprofit, so therefore that would fall to the Friends Group to do the actual writing and administrating of the grant to be able to get that.
Well, and that is the conundrum, because if you're asking a private nonprofit organization to write the grant and implement it, then their function has actually changed. It becomes administrative.
Well, we actually have a Friends Group that works for the museums there at Fort Sill, Friends of Fort Sill. They go out and get grants for us that we can't go. As a federal agency, I can't get any grants at all, because taxpayer money. I can't go anywhere else. I have to just utilize the taxpayer money. But we have them as our fundraising arm that have donation boxes in the locations for people. They administer those. They will go and get the grants from a local foundation, where the Friends Group will put up $2,500 total between them, and they get a matching grant of $2,500 that goes into an endowment. All the dividends go back into the endowment, and they've raised approximately $200,000 to $250,000 in an endowment for us over time. And so, you know, I understand what you're saying, but it really kind of takes this. If the Friends Group wants to help, and I know you all do,
They do.
it's you're gonna have to help him out, help the town out, because there's gonna be certain things that they can't do because of legal reasons, especially with the grants, that you're gonna have to be the ones that actually apply for them, write for them, and then do the administration of the paperwork that needs to be involved with it.
And Barbara, we've actually, at Lover's Key, we've actually hired contract grant writers, and they
Yes.
donate their time to it. And so, and then the Friends of Lover's Key actually administers the grant and tracks it and does all the reporting of it. So, there's ways around it, so
Okay.
if you can find a good, like,
Grant writer?
in your educational or what, you know, the background that you need for these grants and that type of thing, and get a contract grant writer, and then they volunteer their work, or, you know, maybe they get a lifetime membership or something. That's what we do. give them a lifetime membership to Lover Ski.
Was it-
Well,
is it-
that's,
is it
you
hard
know,
to find
writing a
someone?
grant
Yeah,
is a lot
yeah.
of work. I'm
Yeah.
surprised
You
that
bet.
they,
Well,
you could
and
get
it,
one
you know,
that-
you have to find the right people, the people that are so ingrained and they're so interested, like for you, it would be the history and everything. You know, with Lover's Key, it's the environment, it's the state parks, it's, you know, everybody has different motivations. You just have to find it.
And it kind of goes back to what I was saying before, you've got a gem there, so people may be interested, there may be grant writers out there that are interested in the history. They wanna promote Native American history, they might be historical building enthusiasts, you never know, and you can get them on board, and I didn't even think about that there would be people that would be contract grant writers.
Right.
So-
Is it your experience that the grant writers are also good at administering the grant once it's achieved, or is that another,
No.
that's another skill set?
They just
Yeah.
get
No, that
used to
has to be the Friends group.
It has to be the Friends group, so the
Right.
Friends group has
I
to
would think
invest
so.
in
Yeah.
someone that
Right.
has those skills.
And usually it's through the executive committee, the treasurer's involved, the board of directors, that type of thing, but in our case, it's always the executive committee that handles the administration of it, and where the funds go and what's it used for, cause they also have limitations on, you know, this grant is for this,
Right.
and do not stray from this, kind of thing, so.
I think one of our problems is people.
Mhm.
Some of us are aging out. You know, and then, you know, I think one of my, poor Adam deals with me all the time. One of his hardest job is explaining to me that, you know, the museum was like Topsy. It grew, and we had an archaeologist starting out, and that was wonderful. And then she was gone, and then we had an entity. Nothing really happened, and CELCAB, I mean, we were doing the exhibits, we were okaying the colors, we were doing the fonts, we were doing everything, and then I got very possessive, this is Adam's problem, very possessive, and I think it's just perfect the way it is. And I have to learn, and he's teaching me, that we can't be static, we need to evolve. We may need to change some things in that wonderful living room, parlor, and, you know, and for some of us, it's harder than others, but, you know, but we need more people. We need more people. And
Definitely.
it's a small island.
It's hard.
The island needs
It's
more
difficult.
people.
Yeah.
The island
Well,
needs
exactly.
young people. We need to be able
We
to make
need-
this an
yeah,
affordable place
exactly.
for someone to come that wants to raise a family in this environment, and that's a big challenge in this.
Right now.
It is.
We're not gonna
And-
solve
and
it
I-
unless that happens.
And I know that the council will need to be voting on who's going to be serving on advisory boards in the next month. And so I guess I have a question for council, or maybe even to Amy. How many new people have signed up to want to be on CAB or CELCAB? And is there new blood that's interested in coming in to our community? I don't know. I mean,
Amy's giving the one sign, there's one new person.
just one more. Well, maybe we need to do more outreach to the community to say, you know, we would like infusion of new blood onto these committees,
And
these
the
various
deadline's
boards.
tomorrow.
And the deadline is tomorrow.
Okay.
And that makes the council's decision-making far easier if there's actually people to choose from
Yes.
to serve. But if there's no choice, then, you know, the council's kind of stuck
They are.
with us.
They are. It also makes it harder to, you know, to move on and see, you know, and see progress. And you know, that's an important thing. I'm learning.
Well, and to touch upon what you're saying about this growth and trying to get through that, I understand what that means. I mean, it means a lot to anybody who's invested a lot of time into a project. But as you said, you can't stay static. Things have to move, you have to progress. And that's why my recommendations are you need to include more of the Native American aspect into this, and not just the house. I understand the house is important to people, but that Native American history is so important,
Right.
because if without that, you don't have the house.
Exactly.
There was no need to put a house there in the first place. So, and I know that there's angst among people of, well, we wanna change this and do this, but I think, you know, you've got a good person here that can make those decisions. Is this gonna work, is this not gonna work? And you just need to trust in him and the staff that they're not gonna do anything that's going to harm the museum's reputation, the town's reputation in any way. They just wanna see what the best they can possibly do for the museum based on budget limitations, staffing limitations, people on council, the advisory committees limitations. So you just really need to kind of step back, let him do what he needs to do, advise him. Don't ask for colors of paint and you can't do this and you can't do that. You know, trust that he knows how to do that. The experience that I've had with that, prior to me coming into the National Historic Landmark, the curator there was that type of person. Staff could not do anything without his permission. He had to approve the fonts, he had to approve the paint, he had to approve the construction, the type of materials being used. Nothing got done, because he would rather be out giving tours to people instead of doing the day-to-day management of what he was supposed to be doing. So nothing got done. When I came on board, I told them, you people are all adults. You know what you need to do. Here's my vision, go do it. And that's what they've done.
Well, and I think at that point, there was nobody in charge. And there was also a time when I felt that CELCAB was maybe an entity that was helping to preserve the Mound House from a council that was less than friendly. And that was, yeah, so there's that in the history. These guys have been wonderful.
That's
These
true.
guys all donated
Yeah.
a service of something, an experience in our last fundraiser. The council before that dressed up and did a style show for us for the fundraiser. That's coming, guys. It's coming.
No, no.
Hey, don't forget we doubled down too.
Yes,
Yeah.
they did.
Yes,
Yes,
you
they
did.
did. Yes,
Well,
they
just
did.
as an aside, so our
Oh, is it she talking? No, don't hurt.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I thought I was picking up.
You don't wanna hear me anyway.
I can hear you, but obviously they need to have it recorded.
So our, for the last few years, our major fundraiser has been a live auction. And all of the town council members kindly put themselves up for auction.
Yes, they did.
And it was the biggest source of revenue from that auction was the town council experiences. And they all did something unique and they were all wonderful and, it was, And then they doubled them because the bids kept going higher and higher and higher. So they said, well, we'll offer two, so it went to the top two bidders.
Yeah, that's nice.
You were
And it's good to have
absolutely right.
a town council that's involved like that.
It's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah, it's
And if you
really-
get an unfriendly one, you better have an entity that's fighting to keep
Right.
this
Wait,
gem of the
It was
island.
also in the midst of the monsoon that night.
Exactly.
That's memorable.
There's one other thing I'd like to just ask about too. You talk about things that, that maybe have a problem with. And we're a museum that's at the end of a residential street. And right now, I think we've had to work for years, but I think we've got the neighbors pretty well on board with, yeah, except for one, for working with us. But there really isn't that much signage. So many people come in and they go, where do I go? I couldn't find you. At least now they have, they can put it in their GPS and find it. But I think we need a little more signage. I know Adam does great on marketing. But, but it's just as far as people finding us,
Well, I'll give you my experience yesterday.
Okay.
I had GPS driving in, it got to the point that says, you're here. I'm looking around, going,
Exactly.
where am I? And I couldn't see it.
Exactly.
And I went a little bit further, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw parking, and I was like, oh, there it is, okay, and, cause I was about ready to continue down the Shell Road,
Right,
thinking I had to keep
exactly.
going
Exactly.
and around.
Exactly.
So, yes, and I did mention that, that
did.
signage kind of blends in there, it's not kind of
Yeah.
more in your face, arrows, everything pointing. GPS will take you to a certain point, and then it says you're here,
Right here.
and I'm
Right.
looking
Where
around,
am
going,
I?
okay, there's a house being constructed, there's residential here, there's nothing back over here,
House
where am
being
I
torn
supposed to
down.
go? And then it took me a double take to look at that. So I did mention that yesterday to him and to Seth, that, you know, you might wanna look at the signage out front being a little bit, not ostentatious,
Right, you wanna
bold,
keep it-
but being something a little bit more, visible for people to see it when they're coming down to the end. I saw the parking lot further up the road, no problem. Oh, yeah, there's the overflow. No, I don't wanna be there because I know it's further down,
Yeah,
because
Yeah.
GPS is taking me down there.
exactly.
So that was one of the things I did mention that yesterday,
Okay.
because I almost got lost and continued on down the Shell Road, which then I realized, no, I probably should not be going down that, cause that doesn't look like where I need to be going. So yes, that is something I am putting into the report,
Okay,
that
good.
having
And
a
I-
little bit better signage somewhere along the road there
Yes.
for parking.
Yes.
And then maybe even further
Nice
up the
arrow.
road to just say, cause you have the one sign that says Mound House Museum, the brown sign
Yeah,
there
uh-huh.
pointing the
That's it.
arrow. But once you get
That's it.
down there, there's nothing else until you get all the way down there. So maybe another sign with the arrow pointing straight ahead, that you're still continuing in the right direction, you're not lost, and because you are in a residential area, that's not something that's usually done.
Right.
It's usually more in a town center for a museum,
Exactly.
not in a residential area, so people may get confused about that.
Yeah, good point to bring up, Sherry, yes. And actually, I do believe staff is already working on providing the new signage and then also revamping our parking and putting in additional parking spaces along the left side of Connecticut in front of the museum. So I think that it will be addressed fairly quickly. So you're right, it's very frustrating. We only have another 10 minutes left, and we don't want to rush it, but I do, if there are any questions and other comments that we want to share in these last 10 minutes before we adjourn at 11, feel free, jump in.
I have
And-
I have a question actually for Dr. Neal. Other than the signage and the custody of the artifacts, what else do you think we can improve on?
I haven't seen marketing, so I don't know what you're actually doing with marketing to get the word out. One of the things yesterday was when Adam and I went to lunch, along with the actual menus, it was and maybe you can explain it better.
Yeah, we went to a local restaurant, and with the menu, they brought a flyer from Bay Oaks for Fright Night with the menus. So that was great. So great job on the Bay Oaks team for thinking of that. I don't know, I'll try to sneak in too, but.
But something like that, doing something like that, especially during your high season, that would be a great thing to get the visitors, or people that aren't permanent residents that may not know about the Mound House. That would be a good opportunity, is to distribute some of those flyers to those restaurants and have them handed out.
Some of the restaurants too, like Wahoo Willie's has that advertising board, that screen that keeps going, and more people are going to that. That would be pretty easy to get both Bay Oaks and the Mound House on that board to continually show that there's something there. And even though we're here, I stare at it all the time. I got it memorized.
But things like that for marketing, the outreach, as I said, for outreach, educational outreach, there's those sorts of things that the staff could do along with the town and the committee, is the educational outreach to outside schools, more schools in Lee County or actually in Florida, to help them with that requirement. Because obviously schools are looking for things to do. They want to find things for their kids to learn about whatever topic it is. And if it's field trips, it's field trips. But if you can make it easier that they don't have to get a bus and leave at 7 o'clock in the morning and get back at 3 o'clock, right before the bell rings, etc. And you can do something where it's a online, 1 hour, here's a tour, we're talking about this, give them that, then you're going to get an increase in that public outreach portion, which leads to funding, which leads to being able to do more and more things that you all want to have done. Based on what I'm hearing here, you all are very enthusiastic about this museum, the Mound House. You all seem to have a lot of confidence and faith in Adam, based on everybody's shaking their head right now even. And his staff. So, I mean, the biggest thing is to continue that support and really try to help him out in terms of getting things done that he feels needs to be done. Helping him find, not just saying no, but finding ways to yes for him. It's easy to say no. I say no a lot, and I've been forced to learn how do I find yes, especially when it's the commanding general of Fort Sill saying I want this to happen at the museum. I can't say no to him, I have to find a way to yes. So I would ask that the committee and the council also do that. Don't just flat out say no, find that way to yes, find grants, find other ways to really build up as much as possible to assist him as you can. So with that, if there's anything
That's
else,
good.
but running out of time.
Thank you, Dr. Neal, I very much appreciate it.
What are the next
yes,
steps in this whole historic?
So, I'm gonna go back, and write the report, and then I send it off to American Alliance of Museums. They will go through their process to make sure I've covered everything, that's especially, they have a list of things that I'm supposed to look at and cover, making sure that I've covered all of it, making sure that I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you, here's step by step by step. All I can do is give you suggestions, recommendations. So they're gonna look and make sure I'm not telling you, do this, 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 this. And then once they're done with that, they will send the report to Adam so that he has a copy of the report. In 1 year's time, I am to get in contact with him and just say, how are things going? Has that report helped you? Do you have any other questions, any issues, any concerns? And kind of help him work through any of those in 1 year's time. So he has about a year to kind of digest this, you all to look at it and figure out, is this going to be something that you can implement, or steps and recommendations in there are things that you can actually implement. If not, then you don't. It's just, like I said, not a pass or a fail. This is just one person's opinion, one person's suggestions and views on how to make this place the best it can possibly be.
Are you expected to implement within that year a certain percentage
No.
of suggestions or anything like that?
No. Obviously, I think AAM would like something at least be implemented, something, even if it's a small little thing, low-hanging fruit sort of thing. But he doesn't have to report back to them at all. I don't have to report back to them after a year. It's just a courtesy, how's it going? Any issues, any problems, any questions, so that he can kind of give me that feedback for when I go and do somebody else. Did it make sense to you? Those sorts of things. Because once I'm done with here, I don't have any more contact with him. I write the report, and then it's through AAM at that point. He and AAM do a lot of the talking until that 1 year is up.
Okay.
And then there's map 1, map 2, and map 3, is that my understanding?
Yeah, and they've changed it, so it's a collections map, it's a governance map, and if I remember correctly, it is a community outreach map.
So in general, we've been talking about all 3 of those specific initiatives.
And the workbook does have places where I'm supposed to touch upon the exhibits, I'm supposed to touch upon security, collections. I don't go into in-depth. My main focus for this is the governance. But I have to put in a little bit about what I see for collections, what I see for the exhibits, outreach. But I don't go into any major detail there.
Okay, and so then there's a progression of accomplishment that we collectively want to achieve in terms of getting to the next level, ultimately to reach the accreditation designation by AAM.
Yes, and so, you can do all three, you don't have to do all three, it's up to what you wanna do. If you feel that you're in place with the collections and community outreach, and this governance is the only one that you apply for and do, that's fine. And then once you do the accreditation process, they want to see the core documents. They have a list of core documents that they require. They wanna see those before you even get into the process, because the process does cost money. I can't remember if it's $250 or $500 to actually do the application process. So they wanna make sure you are lined up before you start spending money and get knee-deep in this. And come find out when they send accreditation people, and I'm not an accreditation reviewer, they'll send accreditation reviewers, and they will go through everything: governance, collections, community outreach, everything those 3 maps are supposed to set you up for, they will go through in depth and make sure that you have everything in a row, and you are good to go, and you meet their standards. And if you meet their standards, they will sign off on it in a committee. They have a committee meeting, they vote on it, and then you get accreditation, and then it's renewed every couple of years. You don't have to go through this process again, it's just, you have to do a small workbook, make sure you're maintaining everything, and you get to maintain that accreditation.
Okay.
And I don't think it's until 10 years, then they wanna come back and do a full review again.
Review, reaccreditation.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. All right, any other questions for Dr. Neal? Thank you so much, Dr. Neal, for coming down, and this has been hugely informative, interesting, I'm hoping for everyone. With that, it's almost time to adjourn. May I have a motion to adjourn from the CELCAB members? I have to do it separately, right? So from CELCAB members, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Carrie, thank you. Opposed, none? Okay, that motion is carried. So our meeting is adjourned, and we'll have a motion then for
John?
council.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a motion and a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.